I will do that. You mentioned my name, and I was just about to pop in. I was eating candy, and then I was like, so it's sitting over here nice and neat on my desk. But
All
welcome,
right.
everybody. Good to see you. Thanks for hanging out. We know you probably already had a very long day, but it is nice to know that you're willing to give us a little bit of your time this afternoon so we can just talk you through the ins and outs of all things K at Springdale Park. So I'm Terry Harness, I'm the principal. This is my 5th year at Spark, and this will be for our 2nd year at the K Center for next year. And I cannot tell you enough about how Melanie Johnson has taken the K Center and made it an incredible place, and we're so very fortunate to have her. So I don't want to take up her time. Just know that I am excited to see your kids in our building. I see a few faces that I know here. Hey, Miss Worth, I didn't realize that Logan has a sibling, I'm assuming.
Yep, he has a little brother.
Nice. Well, cool. All right. Well, so welcome again. We look forward to seeing your children, seeing you all throughout the community, and just welcoming you to our Springdale Park family. And Melanie, I'm just going to let you go ahead and take it away.
Okay, thanks, Terry. Well, welcome again, everyone. It's great to see your faces and see your names and connect with you. I'm Melanie Johnson. This is my first year as the Spark K Center Program Administrator because it's our first year with the K Center. But I'm also a Spark parent. I have a 5th grader who's been at Spark since kindergarten and a kindergartner who's here with me at the K Center this year. So I know what it feels like to be a K parent. I've done it twice, and once in a pandemic, which I feel like should count for like 3 or 4 times. So wherever you are as a K parent, if this is your first child starting kindergarten or your 2nd or 3rd, I know it's always an emotional time. We're here for you. We're ready to talk through it. So please, please, please ask your questions as we go. So let's go ahead and get started. You've already heard our welcome, so I will jump right in. We're going to start with the K Center. So some of you that might have older kids at Spark may wonder why they're not all at main campus. Well, because our community and our school just continues to grow. We have frankly outgrown our space at main campus because we have so many students and so many families that want to trust us with their students. So 2 years ago, or for 2 years, Morningside used the K Center for their kindergarten campus. Currently, they're at Inman Middle School while Morningside is renovated. Then once Morningside moves back to their building, Inman will become something. We don't know exactly what that will be yet, whether it will be another K-5 elementary school, a 4-5 academy, a kindergarten center, something. But for now, for this current year and then next year, Spark will have a separate K Center at Metro City Church, which is just a little bit further down Briarcliff from main campus, right across from Talentwald. And we are just so lucky to have this little center. It is, to me, the perfect bridge from preschool and pre-K to big kids school and elementary school. Our slogan is all K all day. So all we do is focus on kindergartners all day. I love it. Other parents that I talk to have been very pleased with it. And this year during a pandemic, it has been more helpful than ever to have additional space and more places to spread out and keep our distance. So it's been very nice to have a kindergarten center this year. But if you haven't seen it, take a little drive down Briarcliff. You'll see our sign in front of Metro City Church. Now we'll jump into the boring stuff first, and then we'll get into some fun talk about kindergarten. The first thing is registration, and the district has set the dates of March 16th through 17th as what we call registration roundup, where we're asking you to go ahead online and register. In years past, we would have had you come up to the building and bring your whole folder full of documents. But because of COVID, we're asking that you complete it all online. And I'm going to pull up our school website, and Principal Harness, I think, already put the link in the chat. But on the website, we have a list of everything you need for registration. There are a lot of things to gather for our kindergartners since this is technically their first time in public school. Even if you have a child who's attending APS pre-K, you still are going to be required to upload a lot of documents for kindergarten. For kindergarten, we need proof of residence that you live in the Springdale Park zone, a birth certificate to show that your child is 5 on or before September 1st, 2021. I always get a lot of questions about kids with late birthdays or parents who may be thinking about red shirting for kindergarten and holding them back a year or even repeating kindergarten. So if you have those specific concerns and you want to talk through your child's options, I'm happy to do so. I'll put my email address in the chat as well. But as long as your child is 5 by September 1st, 2021, we will welcome them in kindergarten. So you can go online to the APS website and follow the registration instructions to upload the birth certificate, social security card, your driver's license, proof of residence, affidavit of residency, medical forms. If your child has not had their 5-year-old checkup, you likely will not have a complete immunization form or the 3,300 ear, eye, and dental form that the district requires. That's fine. You can upload those later or email them to me or our secretary, Ms. Peebles. That's totally understandable that you might not have all of that. But if you let your pediatrician know that you're registering for kindergarten, they will be very familiar with the forms that you need. And it's only one form from the doctor and one form to show immunization. Are there any questions about completing your registration online or how to do it? Okay, I had a question in the last session about what if we don't register during that 3-day window? That is not the end of registration. Registration will stay open all the way to and through the first day of school next year. But the earlier you do register, it will help us to plan for next year. We do all of our teacher hiring. In fact, we just got out of 2 teacher interviews right before this. But we do all of our hiring based on projections. And the more concrete information that we have of people that are actually registered, the better we can plan for class assignments and teachers and space. So speaking of space, I know you probably would like to see the kindergarten center. Normally, we would have tours set up or a time when you can bring your prospective kindergartner. Unfortunately, with COVID, that's not something that we're doing right now. But I have one of my kindergartners who's ready to give you a little tour of the K Center on our next slide.
My name is Asher. I will show you around at the K Center.
Thanks, Asher. Show us.
This is the hall.
Do you want to show us your classroom?
Yeah.
Okay, take us to your.
Our classroom, and this is my desk.
Awesome. Asher, what's your favorite thing about kindergarten?
Recess. Playground recess.
Big long recess?
I said playground.
Oh, playground recess. What else do you like about kindergarten?
Breakfast.
Anything you like to learn in kindergarten?
Reading, and math.
Writing, reading, and math. Good
I also
job.
love social studies
You also love social studies?
and science.
Nice. Do you have any advice for students who might be coming to kindergarten next year?
It's okay to be nervous, unlike me. And that's all.
Thanks, Asher.
Okay, I never get tired of watching little Asher show everybody around the K Center. So he came in the side ramp, which is the back of Metro City Church, and that's where all of our students enter the K Center. They go down that checkerboard hallway that you saw. Right now, we have 4 classes downstairs. We actually have 3 additional rooms upstairs that don't have students face-to-face right now because 2 of our classes are virtual. But beginning on March 22nd, we will bring another face-to-face class on board for this year upstairs. And there are some videos that are posted on the website that also give you a full tour of the kindergarten center if you'd like to see it. But you can see from a 5-year-old perspective, the most important things are recess and breakfast, or usually lunch. Those typically come up as the favorite experiences. But I was happy to see that Asher also hit on some of our curriculum elements. He talked about the fact that he enjoyed reading, writing, math, science, and social studies. Those are the big subjects that we teach. All of our teaching is based on the Georgia Standards of Excellence, so it's the state curriculum. But in kindergarten, of course, that reading has a heavy focus on phonics and learning how to read. We also really focus on social emotional learning. That has been a big push from the district as well as Spark. And in these current times we're in, we know that it's more important than ever to focus on the whole child well-being. So every day begins with a morning meeting where students do a check-in, they talk about feelings, making friends, they play games that teach them different coping skills. So that happens every day in the morning. It's also interwoven throughout our other subjects. So anything that we're doing, we're still focusing on those SEL competencies.
So Melanie, we have a couple of questions in the chat. The first one is, what is the long-term kindergarten location plan at Spark?
Sure. So long-term, after next year, kindergarten will move back to Spark main campus so that Spark will be K-5 depending on what happens with Inman. So really we're all not really sure what the long-term plan will be until the district announces what the plan is for Inman. If Inman becomes a K-5 elementary school, Spark will remain K-5. If Inman becomes a 4-5 academy for the whole Grady cluster, then other schools like Spark, Maryland, Morningside would all be K-3, and then the 4th and 5th graders would go to Inman, or vice versa. If Inman became a kindergarten center, then the other schools would remain 1 through 5 with kindergartners going to that location. Unfortunately, we don't have that information to share because it's still to be determined by APS.
So Melanie, you mentioned a lot of great things that we teach at Spark and what the kids will be doing. Is there recess time, and how much time do they get?
Absolutely. We know recess is important for everyone, but our kindergartners especially, they have 2 recesses every day. They have a morning recess at 9:45 and then an afternoon recess that's tied in with their lunchtime from 11:15 to 12. They have lunch and recess. So COVID has thrown some unique challenges our way, and we try to keep each class in their own little bubble, we say. So each class has a designated recess zone each day where they go. So they may not be on the playground each day. They may be in the jump rope area or hula hoop or sidewalk chalk. We try to make them all fun areas, but each class goes outside for recess twice a day. The first recess time is about 15 to 20 minutes. And the second one honestly depends on how long they take to eat. They have 45 minutes total for their lunch and recess. Typically lunch is 30 minutes, but if they know recess is coming, they never spend that whole time on lunch. They usually eat for about 20 minutes and then have recess for about 20 to 25 minutes. So they get a good chunk of recess every day. They also get specials every day. Our specials are art, music, PE, social emotional learning, environmental science, media center currently. And so that time, there are 2 PEs during that 7-day rotation. So they also get that time to move around and stretch their legs and their muscles. We also know that movement is so important in kindergarten. I'm going to talk a little bit later about how COVID has changed the layout of kindergarten and the way we run things, but we make sure that our kinders are moving. We know they're not, you can see behind Asher, the desk shields in the desks. We have had to adjust so that they're sitting behind desk shields and at desks, but they don't sit in that same spot all day long. We make sure that they get up and move.
Okay. Melanie, there are a couple of other questions, but I think you're going to cover them in just a few moments. So we'll hold on for now.
All right. Last thing I want to say about this one is that for specials right now, you may have heard, or if you have older children at Spark, our specials teachers are Zooming into the classrooms. They're projected on the big Recordex board at the front. We made that decision when students started coming back face-to-face because we didn't want our specials teachers to interact with all 750 students. So we're not sure exactly what that will look like next year and whether the specials teachers will be Zooming in or not. But even when they come in on Zoom, the teacher, and in kindergarten case, teacher or para, are in there with the students to facilitate. So they have a specials teacher on Zoom and then another adult in the classroom to help them with art supplies or PE equipment or anything that they need. So let's hear from another one of our little friends about some more of the curriculum, and we'll keep going. Not Asher again. Next one. There we go. Ah.
I like to do math, science, and slide to the playground. And I do some, we wake up Mabel.
What do you mean you wake up Mabel?
We do.
What does Mabel help you do?
She draw us a note.
She left you a note?
Yeah.
Does she help you learn how to read?
Yeah.
Oh, so I see why you have to wake her up.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jackson.
That was my friend Jackson, and you obviously heard him talking about Mabel, but you're probably like, who is Mabel? She is one of the components of our reading and writing program. We use the Teachers College Reading and Writing, and in kindergarten, I mentioned a heavy emphasis on phonics, but Mabel is an elephant that is kind of a puppet that works with the teachers use to help get the kids excited about learning new sounds and learning new words. And so she's part of that Teachers College program that we use. It really focuses heavily on conferencing and teaching kids how to select books that are appropriate for their level and really building that love of reading. So that's one of our big focus for reading. And then for math, we use a program called Eureka Math. It builds a strong foundation in number sense. So sometimes I do have kindergarten parents say that the math program seems a little easy at the beginning. And it may, but it really builds such a strong foundation so that kids are set up to do higher level math later on. It really does a good job of building that foundation. And then we use varied resources to support science and social studies standards to really make that real world connection for them. Currently, they're planting seeds in environmental science and they're learning about rocks and soils at the same time. So they're making those connections every day. Any more questions that I need to hit, Terry, before we move into assessments?
I think you're good. Just I'll make sure to catch up that.
Okay.
You can keep going, Melanie.
All right. So a lot of parents have questions about the assessments that students will take in kindergarten, especially because this is often the first time that you get a real gauge on where your child is relative to their peers or nationally. So there's several different assessments that we administer. The first is STAR, and that's given 3 times a year. It's on the computer, it's adaptive, so it adapts based on the student's responses. And it's STAR early literacy, but it also includes math. And so that's a great way for us to measure the growth of the child over the course of the year. And all of our students, K to 5, take STAR. But that's something that your teacher will share with you. You will have a conference after the first STAR administration, and then one more throughout the year. So that's a great way to get a sense of where your child is. It also gives you an idea of what you need to work on, how you can support at home. The teachers can give you all of that information so that you can really get a clear picture of where your child is according to the grade level. And then there's also GKids Readiness and GKids. That's the Georgia assessment for kindergarten. And it's not really a one-time assessment like a test. It's more of a portfolio approach where the teachers are observing the students over time based on the kindergarten standards and rating whether they're growing, progressing, need improvement, or proficient in the grade level standards. So you'll also receive reports on how your child is doing relative to grade level standards in GKids. The next assessment that we give school-wide is Fountas and Pinnell. And this is a one-on-one reading assessment where teachers can really read with the child. They do what's called a running record where the child reads and the teacher makes notes on the same reading passage. And that gives us a really clear idea of a student's independent reading level and instructional reading level so that students are successful when reading by themselves, but appropriately challenged when working with the teacher. And that's a great way to really push them in terms of reading levels. We also give several math assessments with Eureka and many classroom assessments that the teachers give throughout the day, throughout the week. But one of our goals in kindergarten is to make the assessments feel very natural and not like a scary test. They're really just classroom tasks and activities that they're doing throughout the week that the teachers use to measure how the students are progressing and what they need more support in.
So Melanie, there is a question, and the question is, when is Fountas and Pinnell provided?
When, I'm assuming that means when are the results provided? So typically it's given at least twice a year. This year was a little bit different because of us being virtual all first semester. So typically we give Fountas and Pinnell around October for kindergarten. Your teacher can give you more information on that next year, and we We'll always send out parent newsletters that have information on upcoming assessments and things that we're learning in the classroom. So if you have any questions about that, you can always reach out to your teacher. But once they give that assessment, usually about October, they will set up a conference or send home the results in an email.
So Melanie, let me go and ask this question because I want to make sure we get it covered. What is the planned class size for kindergarten for next year?
Great question. So right now we are planning classes. We are planning to have 8 kindergarten classes at the K Center. We are not exactly sure what the social distancing requirements are going to be for next year. For this year, we are still trying to keep a full 6 feet apart. And our space at the K Center is great, but also challenging because it's an old building. So our rooms are not modular. They're not a standard size. We have 2 classrooms that are really big that currently have 16 students apiece. In non-COVID times, those rooms could each hold 32 and 28. So for next year, we can't give you a definitive number of class size, but it will depend on the room size. So we could have some classes as small as 10 to 12, and we may have some classes significantly larger depending on the room size.
And Mr. Cooper also asked, what do you think the likelihood of us being 5 days a week will be?
You know, I wish I had a crystal ball, Mr. Cooper. I wish I did. I truly believe it depends on, you know, how quickly people get vaccinated, what that looks like as they continue to research the vaccine for children. I truly don't know. And for those of you that might be new to APS or Spark this year, students are virtual on Wednesdays. It's what we call asynchronous Wednesday, where they work from home. The building is deep cleaned and teachers have some planning time because right now the teachers are with the students all day long, face to face. So those asynchronous Wednesdays have been really critical for cleaning the buildings and for planning, but I'm not sure, Mr. Cooper. If we hear anything, we'll let you know.
And I think an appropriate follow-up question, Ms. Fernandez has asked, what is the governing body we use for COVID procedures that we implement at Spark? And do we foresee any of those things changing?
So we use the CDC recommendations as well as the DPH, Department of Health recommendations. And then APS provides guidance as well using those two. In addition, Spark has also, Mr. Harness has also sought parent input from some of our parents who work at CDC to help us with a lot of these things because, I mean, as we know, this was all new to all of us, and then especially to us educators, this was not our area of expertise, although I feel like we've become experts very quickly. So we use all of those, the recommendations from the CDC and DPH to determine the distancing and the guidelines that we follow for COVID. But a lot of that comes from the district as well. So I don't know if the guidance is going to change. I know the CDC just released updated guidance for people who are fully vaccinated, but there has not been much change as far as children or schools yet. You know, I think it could change somewhat, but I'm just not sure. Terry, do you have any?
Yeah, and I think Melanie, you answered that perfectly. We'll continue to follow the CDC guidelines and any guidelines that the district also provides. So does that mean we may not have the desk shields like you saw Asher show at his desk? We might not, but we may. Ms. Fernandez also mentioned, will we continue to have staggered recess times? And that's typically just a safety thing. So the answer for that would be yes, we will definitely do that. And we'll continue to try, again, per CDC guidelines and district guidelines, we'll continue to try to keep our kids in their own bubble until they say that we no longer have to remain in our bubbles. So, but one thing that Melanie will do and I will do is make sure that all of our parents are completely aware of any changes that may be coming down the pipe.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for chiming in.
Sure.
So now we're on to support services. Everything that is offered as far as support at main campus is also offered at the K Center. So if we have any students who qualify for ESOL services, meaning they may speak a language other than English, those services will be provided at the K Center. And if you do have a child that speaks another language, you would indicate that on your registration so that we could do an ESOL screener and determine whether or not they qualify for services. We also offer early intervention, which means that when we give some of those assessments that I talked about, like GKIDS readiness and STAR early literacy, if we notice that a child has some deficits, they may get additional support through early intervention. And for that, it's really usually, especially in kindergarten, the homeroom teacher just providing additional support. Sometimes there's an EIP teacher that could pull them out for additional support, but in kindergarten, that's usually the classroom teacher. And you'd be notified if your child qualified for EIP services as well. Special education, IEP is different than EIP. This would be for any student that qualifies to receive additional services because of a psychological evaluation or a medical diagnosis. If you feel like your child may need an IEP or may qualify for special education services, please reach out to me when you register and I can get you in touch with our special ed lead teacher, Nathan Stevenson, and he can give you more information, talk more about the process, because the first letter in IEP stands for individualized. This really is dependent on the child and what they need. And so there's a wide range of services that fall under special education. And we could talk about how your child might qualify if that's the case for you. The last support is gifted. So we often have a lot of parents asking about testing kindergartners for gifted. So the gifted identification process involves multiple assessments. The first window for parents to refer their children for gifted is usually in the fall, usually September, and you will get plenty of emails and reminders if you'd like to recommend your child be tested for gifted. Then the teachers also do a recommendation. Usually that's in December, where they recommend students for gifted, and then gifted testing typically starts in December or January. We actually just got started this year, just a couple weeks ago, because we were late coming back face-to-face. And then students are given multiple assessments to determine if they qualify, because there are several different areas that are assessed, like creativity, motivation, mental ability. All of those things create a composite score and determine gifted eligibility. That's a lot of information, but the short answer is, because of all that testing, most kindergartners wouldn't start receiving gifted services until very late in the year in kindergarten, if not the start of first grade, because of that whole identification process. But if you have any questions about gifted, please feel free to reach out to me and I can put you in touch with our gifted lead teachers. There's also some information on our website that will give you more information about gifted services.
All right, I'm putting that link in the chat right now, Melanie, and there's a follow-up question regarding the class sizes that you mentioned earlier.
Sure.
Would larger class sizes have additional teachers or additional support?
Maybe. So right now, all of our teachers have a paraprofessional that's in the classroom with them. Recently, we've had a couple larger virtual classes and they had additional para support or additional teacher support. Like we have an art teacher who's part-time, but she was pushing in and supporting some of our virtual classes because they were larger and we wanted to make sure that students had more small group time. So that's something that we would look at depending on the numbers. But I will say that COVID times class sizes are very small. I mean, current class sizes with 2 adults, it's great to have 16 kids or less and 2 adults. If we got up into the 30 child range that we talked about pre-COVID, we would normally have at least a part-time additional para in there with the teacher.
Okay, we have one follow-up question regarding worst case scenarios in COVID-19 for next year. And the question is, hold on, let me find that.
Yeah, I'm trying to find.
And the question is, worst case scenario, will our kids be in person at least 4 days a week next year?
I hope so. I mean, that's where we are right now. So currently our kids, and this is a perfect segue to my next slide, whoever that was, thanks for teeing it up for me. So right now our face-to-face students are coming 4 days a week. One of our other parents mentioned asynchronous Wednesdays for deep cleaning and teacher planning. We are hopeful that next year there will be an option for face-to-face at least 4 days a week, and potentially still a virtual option for parents who maybe aren't comfortable sending their kids back face-to-face, or children that may have underlying medical conditions or whatever the case may be. There's a possibility that there will still be that virtual option. But I am hopeful that that is the worst case scenario, if you will, 4 days a week, and that there's a potential for 5 days a week. We just don't know that for sure. So don't quote me on that. But
yeah, but I think the only thing I would say is that we are going to hope and keep our fingers crossed that we'll be back a full 5 days a week. I mean, that is what I think our teachers want. It's what we know is right for kids. It's what we want. And we know, we feel confident that our parents want that too. So we'll continue to let you guys know when the district shares more of that information down the road.
Thank you. Yep. And we really hit most of these things already. How has kindergarten changed since COVID? I encourage you to visit our website. Terry does a great job of keeping it updated. I'll click on this just to show you some of the COVID protocols that we have in place. You can see all of the things that we do daily, how we contact trace, videos that we show the children to make sure they know what's going on with the COVID procedures. We've also really changed our arrival and dismissal procedures. At the Case Center, we only have one grade level, so all the kindergartners come in one entrance. You may have seen the arrows on the hall when Asher was giving the tour so that children all walk on the same side of the hall, the distancing reminders on the floor. At main campus, different grade levels come in different entrances. Everybody has temperature screening. You saw the desk shields. All of that is in place to ensure safety. Students wear masks all the time except when they're eating or drinking. With the phenomenal support of our PTO, they purchased a bunch of picnic tables for main campus and Case Center. So we try to get kids outside as much as possible to eat and even to do schoolwork. We do a lot of small reading groups outside. We go outside for lunch almost every day, especially now that the weather's getting nice. If it's not raining, we're outside for lunch and 2 recesses every day. And then anytime the teachers want to take the kids out for class, I encourage it. So we're trying to get them outside as much as possible. But there have been some changes to the way the classroom functions due to COVID. We don't have kids sitting in a circle on the rug close together like we used to. Teachers are trying to keep the desks spaced out. So those things we will continue to evaluate, and if the guidelines change or if there are different recommendations, we'll adjust. But I will say that we were worried about how it would be received when kids came back, if they wouldn't think it was fun anymore, or they would think it was just too different from the spark they left last March. And our kids have been super happy. They really enjoy it. They're happy to be back. They barely notice the masks and they're not bothered by some of the changes that are put in place. They honestly just love being back in school. So that's been really reassuring that even though there have been some changes, the kids are happy and they like it. And the teachers too, they're happy to have the kids back face to face as well. Even with the changes, they were nervous as well. We all were because it was so new, but it's been going really, really well.
So Melanie, there's one question from a little earlier about what time can I drop my kid off and what time can I pick them up?
Good question. So you can drop off as early as 7:30. And I'm glad you brought up drop off. So especially if you have children at multiple campuses, we're asking that you drop off at main campus first if you have an older child, and then turn right to come to the Case Center. If you just have a kindergartner, don't worry about that. You can drop off as early as 7:30. School starts at 8 o'clock. And then for dismissal in the afternoons, we load the buses at the Case Center at 2:15 because all of our buses make stops at the Case Center and main campus. So if you have a bus rider and you have children at multiple campuses, they can still ride the bus. The buses drop off here in the morning and then go to main campus. And then they pick up here in the afternoons at 2:15 and then head to main campus to load up the older kids. And then parents, our carpool starts just after the buses pull out. So we ask that you don't arrive until 2:20 for carpool, just so that the buses don't get blocked in. But then you can pick up as early as 2:20 until 2:45. And for parents looking for after school options, we do have the club after school at both campuses. So that's our after school provider, and they are on our website. You can register online, and they are open every day from 2:30 until 6:30. So you are welcome to take advantage of that. Currently, we are not having extracurricular clubs at either campus, like ballet, karate, some of the things that we used to offer pre-COVID. Those may come back next year, depending on how things are going, but we definitely have an after-school option for parents that need additional care.
So Melanie, we have a question going back to COVID. What are recommendations for kids who medically cannot wear a mask?
So if a child medically cannot wear a mask, they would not be required to, but that's something that we would have to talk about. We would need to, have a conversation, talk about different options, potentially a face shield, but that's a one-on-one conversation that we would have. I would ask that you just reach out to me directly, and then depending on the medical reason, we can determine if anybody else needs to be involved.
So now the vaccine is finally available for teachers. Are vaccines mandatory for staff, and or will parents be informed if a child's teacher is or is not vaccinated? That's a really good question.
That is a good question. So we cannot mandate the vaccine for anybody. That is an individual choice. I will say that the majority of our teachers are thrilled that the vaccine is available for teachers, and are taking advantage of it, but we cannot require anyone to take a vaccine, nor can we share whether or not a teacher is vaccinated. That would be a HIPAA violation. So that's not something we can share. Now, many teachers may share it. I've seen them putting it out on Twitter or telling people about it because they're so excited, but that's not something that, as an administration, that we could share.
So one question I'm going to want to make sure I get before we move into the other one. Will kids be able to ride the bus to main campus to be picked up carpool there with their older siblings?
Unfortunately, no. We are really trying not to have kids bust back and forth. And we honestly made that decision even pre-COVID, because our 5-year-olds are the hardest to dismiss because they just tend to get lost, and we don't want that to happen. We want to keep a close eye on them and have them not have any additional transportation. We ask parents to pick up separately at both locations. And I know that may seem like a lot on parents, but honestly, it has not been hard at all. Parents typically go to main campus, make a right, swing right through the kindergarten center, and it's very easy. We usually don't have a line at the kindergarten center at all because we're so much smaller than main campus. So we'll get you in and out.
Okay, and I apologize if I mispronounce this name. Miss Lowe is asking, do we have breakfast, snack time, and lunch? And what is provided by Spark, and what do we need to pack with our child?
Great question. So Spark will provide breakfast and lunch to any student who wants it. This year, it's free to all students. All we need is to know a week in advance if your child will be eating breakfast and lunch so that we can give that count to the cafeteria. But that is available. It's a grab and go breakfast. So it's a cold breakfast like cereal or a muffin. And then the lunch is a hot lunch. And at the K Center, we don't have a cafeteria, but the Spark cafeteria prepares the meals, and then we pick them up and bring them over here. And we have a warmer and a refrigerator that we keep them in. So we're happy to provide breakfast and lunch. If you're packing a lunch, you're welcome to pack it. In kindergarten, we have 2 snack times throughout the day. We have a morning snack right before morning recess and an afternoon snack about 1:30 or 1:45 because the kids get hungry. Principal Harness put the wellness policy in the chat already, but that has some great ideas for some snacks you can send in. We typically ask parents if they don't mind sending some extra snacks for the homeroom teacher to keep on hand in case anyone forgets their snack any day. I also keep emergency snacks in my office if anybody needs a granola bar or goldfish or anything like that. One good thing to do to prepare for kindergarten is to practice opening containers. We have a lot of kids who bring fancy bento boxes and all kinds of thermoses and containers that the little 5-year-old hands just struggle to open. So that's a great thing to start practicing now so that your child is ready to be self-sufficient in kindergarten. Any other questions?
I think we are all caught up. I think we're caught up.
All right, great. Well, our next slide is on virtual kindergarten. So just in case that is an option for next year, or something you may be considering, I wanted to make sure you saw how that would work as well. I know this year there was a lot of apprehension about virtual kindergarten and how would it work and would 5-year-olds really be able to learn online. And I will say that I have been so impressed by the way our kids and our teachers and our parents have handled virtual learning. It has been a learning curve for all of us, but really, really overall very successful. So I want you to hear from one of our virtual kindergartners.
Hi, my name is Isaac, and I'm going to tell you guys what I love about virtual kindergarten. Our class is very fun, and it's with this with all of our whiteboards, and it's fun because you get a couple breaks and we do science and we learn about rocks and stones.
Thank you, Isaac.
Hearing her talk just warms my heart. She's so funny. She didn't even practice. She's just like ready to talk about virtual kindergarten. But for our virtual learners, they attend via Zoom. They have the same schedule as face-to-face, but with some screen breaks that Isaac mentioned. They love their screen breaks, some time to get away and move and have a snack. And our teachers are continuing to find creative ways for students to interact with each other. It was very important for us, especially in kindergarten, that students still feel that bond with their teacher, with each other, that they make friends, and that SEL component is really there. So we've really worked hard this year to make sure our students feel that connection and get as much of the same experience as we're giving them face-to-face. So I love to hear her talk about how much she loves art class. All of the things we're exposing our kids to in the face-to-face setting, we want our virtual students to have access to as well.
Okay, we have a couple of questions, Melanie. One is from CC3854. This person is asking, if more kids sign up for in-person for next year, will they have to reduce the number of in-person days?
So the answer to that, like many things right now, unfortunately, is I'm not sure. Right now, hybrid is an option if more families select face-to-face than the school is able to accommodate. I'm sure you've probably heard talk of that in the neighborhood, that 60% rule. If a school gets over 60% that elect face-to-face, a school could go hybrid. And I will stress that could. It doesn't mean that you have to. It means you have the autonomy to do that if that's what's needed based on space constraints, the number of teachers on telework. So my guess would be that it would still depend on those factors for next year. I don't know next year what the telework options will be for teachers, what our constraints will be in terms of that. So again, like we said before with the 5-day-a-week question, our hope is that children are face-to-face 5 days a week, that COVID is manageable and things are really looking up. If that changes, this year has taught us to be so flexible and come up with things that we never thought we'd be doing in education. I mean, if you told me we would have asynchronous Wednesdays every single week, I would have thought it was crazy. And here we are. So I don't know, but the hope would be 5 days a week face-to-face.
All right, and a follow-up question regarding pickup and drop-off time. May I drop off my child at the beginning and pick her up, and can I change using the bus later in the year?
Yes, we ask that you don't change constantly. It's very hard, like I was saying, for our 5-year-olds if they don't have a consistent mode of transportation. So it's hard if Monday they're bus, Tuesday they're carpool, Thursday they're van, and Friday they're the after school program. That's very confusing. But if you start off as a car rider, you want your child to get acclimated, you want to physically see them walk into the building every day for the first few days, weeks, or months, and then you want to transition to a bus rider, that's completely acceptable and happens all the time. Any other questions?
I don't see any.
Okay. So parents ask all the time, what can I do to prepare for kindergarten? And the first thing that I always say is talk about it. We want our kids excited about kindergarten. So make sure that they know it's something to look forward to, that it's exciting, that it's not scary. It will be new, but it will be a chance for them to grow and make new friends, meet new people. So that's the first thing. And then the next thing I always recommend is to practice personal information. If we have kids coming to kindergarten that know their first and last name, especially if they go by a name other than their first name, but first and last name, they know their address, their phone number, well, your phone number, parents, if they have any allergies and how they're getting home. Those are the main things that we would love for all of our 5-year-olds to know. The next thing would be to work on self-help skills like tying shoes. That's still a work in progress with my kindergartner, but we're continuing to work on it. Opening those lunch containers like we talked about, putting straws in juice boxes. Those are all great skills to practice with 5-year-olds entering kindergarten. And finally, using 2-step oral directions. Following multi-step directions is very helpful. If you practice, put your coat on your chair, sit down at your desk, pull out your folder. 3-step direction, but those types of things are very helpful. If kids can do that, we got it from there. We can handle the academic things. All right, and then parents are always asking, so what do I need to do next? All right, you told me about all this. First thing is register. Even if you are not 100% sure, the earlier you register, the more it helps us to plan. And a lot of those questions that you've asked about class sizes and teacher ratio, all of that is easier to determine if we're working with concrete numbers and registrants versus projections. So that would be very helpful. The next thing is join the PTO. Our PTO is so good to us. They support so many of our endeavors at Spark, and that's because of awesome, engaged parents like you. So if you have any desire to help Spark, please join the PTO. You can also sign up for our Spark E. It's our weekly newsletter that contains all things Spark. Principal Harness does a fabulous job of keeping the community informed and up to date. Especially in a time when things are changing so rapidly. A lot of these questions that you asked about vaccinations, changes in the guidelines, changes in the requirements for schools, all of that will be communicated with parents as soon as we know it. And the best way to stay up to date is to join the Spark E and to check the Spark website. He also updates that frequently. Even the recording from this morning's info session and this one, I'm sure will be up on our website by tomorrow, so that if you have friends or neighbors that couldn't attend that are interested in kindergarten, please direct them to the Spark website. It houses all important information for Spark and is updated frequently. Additionally, we will be having some upcoming events later this year and into the summer. We hope to have a kindergarten experience. That used to be when kindergartners came to school for a portion of the day and got to tour the school and go to the lunchroom and the classrooms. For right now, we are not doing that in person. Last year, we did a virtual version that was still really fun. The teachers are on that day, and they can talk a lot more about the fun things of kindergarten. This info session was really more just an overview and talking about registration and COVID protocols. But the teacher virtual experience is a lot more fun. So we encourage you to attend that with your children. And then we're hopeful to have some summer play dates this year. PTO usually puts those on. And then we also in years past have had a kindergarten camp that the club after school program sponsors. And they do that for a couple of days where kids can actually come to kindergarten and start learning the ropes before school actually starts. So we're hopeful that that may be an option this summer as well.
Okay, so there are a couple of questions. Are there any foreign languages in the curriculum? Are they exposed to other cultures, etc.?
So we did have Spanish this year. We actually just hired a bilingual parent liaison, and we will resume our Spanish exposure next year as one of our specials in that 7-day rotation that we talked about. But it is more of an exposure to a foreign language. It's not designed to get our elementary school students fluent. But at Spark, we are really fortunate that we have students who come from many cultures at our school. We welcome diversity and really celebrate the different cultures. That is a part of the curriculum at all grade levels in social studies, and it's something that the teachers and the instructional coaches work hard to tie in to our instruction so that students are able to connect what they're learning in the classroom with their own culture or the culture of their classmates. We have a lot of students and families that are eager to share things, whether it's about, the Chinese New Year or a family tradition. And we encourage teachers and students to do that as much as possible.
Okay, and we have another question. In terms of curriculum, are there discussions or topics around social justice, white fragility, white supremacy?
So on certain grade levels, they get into that a little bit more in the upper grades, like 5th grade. In kindergarten, we do touch on some things that are similar to that. In fact, I just had a great discussion with our social studies coordinator. I was so glad that our kindergarten teachers brought up that we would be in kindergarten social studies, there's a lot about American symbols and the Pledge of Allegiance and holidays. Those are big things in the kindergarten social studies curriculum. And our teachers really want to make sure that they are teaching our students appropriately and teaching them to think for themselves and making sure that they're painting an accurate picture of history and these symbols and what they represent. So they asked me to reach out to our district social studies coordinator to ask for advice and resources on how to teach those topics in a more culturally responsive way, which I was super happy to do and very impressed and very glad that our teachers wanted to do that. So I can't speak to all of the social studies content on the upper grades, but I can say that even as young as kindergarten, those are things that we consider. We want to make sure that Spark is an inclusive community that supports all of our students, our families, and that teaches our children a culture of tolerance and respect. Those are themes that we talk about a lot through our SEL curriculum as well.
Yeah, and also I placed in the chat, Melanie, that Spark is a no place for hate school. You can click on the link. It'll give you a little bit more information about that. Again, it's what Melanie just said, teaching inclusivity, acceptance of all, and through SEL, just giving us an opportunity to speak through our feelings and understanding that tolerance is something that we all need to practice. So, yeah, I love that question. I appreciate you asking that question too. That's a deep question, but one that I think makes sense for even our 5-year-olds to have a little exposure to. So I appreciate you asking that. All right, another question is from Ms. Mitchell. Do you have any idea when the K camp will be announced, or is it usually right before school starts?
Usually I think it is like mid-July. Is that right, Terry? I feel like
it is. You guys are asking some great questions, and I laugh because Melanie and I are we're very specific, and we want to know, specific dates and times. It's hard to do right now in COVID times, specifically with the constraints that we have to adhere to and comply with from the district. So I am going to assume that some of these things will be lifted and we'll be able to get back to some normalcy, whatever that may be nowadays. But as soon as we find out, as soon as we have a little bit more information, we'll definitely share at the kindergarten camp. I'll have to admit, it's one of the coolest experiences to give the kids the opportunity to see the school, to get a vibe, a feel for the school, and to know that that's their big school now. So it is something that's worthwhile. It's something that we appreciate, we love to do. And I just hope that we're able to do it before school begins.
Me too. I hope so. They love it. And I just have one more video of our friends.
Catherine, what do you like about virtual kindergarten?
I like the teachers that are, because they help me learn.
That's great. Is there anything else that you like?
I like the students or friends at Spark because they are very smart.
You are very smart. Have you made friends even though you're virtual?
Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything else you would like to share with kindergartners who may start next year?
Well, I hope they could be smart and very friendly with their friends.
That's perfect. Thank you, Catherine.
I just love it. The photo bombs from her little sister and her talking about making friends. That just warms my heart in kindergarten. But I wanted to close with that because we're all in this together. I think, we talked about the flexibility, but being virtual for so long brought a new connection between the families of Spark and the teachers and the administration. We know that there is a strong desire for all the answers and all the information, and we wish we could give it all to you, but we promise we will let you know just as soon as we know more about the plans for next year. But we're excited that you chose to spend your afternoon learning about kindergarten. I know it's a lot to think about, that your 5-year-olds are about to start school, but we're here for you. We can't wait to meet them, and we are happy to answer any other questions you have.
So one question was, when is the first day of school?
August 5th. We'll put the calendar in the chat.
Yep, it's there in the chat. And someone also asked for a link of after school activities. So I also put that in the chat. And if you've noticed, every one of these links are directly coming from the Springdale Park website. It's all there. So feel free. You'll probably learn a lot more there too. Have fun. Go through the website. You'll learn lots.
Well, it's a serious website, but it has the answers to lots of questions. I'm also putting my email address in the chat. Please feel free to reach out if you have any follow-up questions or if there are any unique questions about your child that you'd like to discuss. I'm happy to talk with you further.
All right, I don't see any other questions, but we will hang back. If anyone would like to stay with us for a little bit longer and ask some questions, feel free. Otherwise, thank you guys so much. Can't wait to see your kids and have you in the community and get back to normal life.
I look forward to meeting those of you that we haven't met. Thanks, Kim. See ya.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle.
Ms. Fernandez, you asked some really great questions. Mr. Cooper, thank you so much for the questions.
Yes, I see your hand, Ms. Fernandez. Go ahead.
Hey there.
Hi.
Hey, so
You're
I have a
doing it
question.
from your car. You're asking
Well-
questions from your car. Nicely done.
Well, I'm parked. So my question is, like, if the CDC recommendations and Atlanta Public School recommendations shift because, you know, the vaccine and everything kind of, you know, hopefully makes things better, do you guys foresee making changes with the, like, for instance, the desk shields and stuff? Would you consider taking those away if it's appropriated by the CDC?
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
Well,
And admittedly, there are some schools in the Grady cluster that are not using the desk shields currently. So like Morningside, they don't have them. Mary Lynn doesn't have them. You just happen to have a principal and program administrator that is anything that could help protect our kids and our teachers. We just wanted to make sure that we had in place. So we're not married to them, but we're dating the desk shields for right now. And we'll, you know, and if we need to remove them, then we'll remove them. But
Cool.
Yeah.
And then you guys spoke a lot about the positives of the virtual learning, and I can only imagine like the work you guys have had to put in. But have you noticed any negative effects from the new implementations that you guys have been having to do in terms of virtual learning and also the things around the school in face-to-face learning? Have you noticed any negative impact, like psychologically with the kids, especially if, like, let's say they forget about their mask and the teacher has to, you know, remind them, are they being reprimanded for things like not following the right direction, those kind of stuff?
Melanie, I'll let
Sorry,
you
I know I'm asking really deep questions, but you know,
That's
they're
good.
things that are important.
No, and there are things you have to consider when making decisions for your child. So don't feel bad for asking the questions ever. I'll address the virtual one first. I do think, you know, it depends on the child, but I have talked to many parents who, you know, virtual learning was going well for a while, but then the Zoom burnout is real. And I mean, I feel it as an adult. So I feel it for our 5-year-olds. I think the novelty wore off, the exhaustion set in, and some of our kids were really like, okay, this is not working for me. I need to get back to school. I need to be, you know, not necessarily saying that, but the parents were saying, I see a difference in my child. They're not as happy. They're not as excited about school. They're not as excited about seeing their teacher on the screen. They want to get back face to face. And then many of those parents have said now that they are face to face, oh my gosh, it's back to the old Terry, or it's back to the old Melanie. You know, they're so happy to be there. I would say that I've seen more negatives on the virtual end than with the face-to-face with the precautions. I have not heard, surprisingly, because Terry and I did many town halls prior to the start of face-to-face, and we really wanted to prepare parents for what school would look like, because it's very different than it was when the kids left last March. So we tried to be brutally honest. You know, the kids are going to wear masks. They are going to be required to keep their distance. They're going to have designated spots for lunch and recess. And we thought there would be more of a negative perception from the children. And I really haven't seen it. I mean, Terry, let me know if you have.
I agree. That was my biggest concern, was them coming from virtual learning back into the building, into a building that did not feel like what it was prior. And that was my worry. I kept saying it. but I forget that kids are so resilient. They were just so excited to be out of their home, back into the building, around people that they knew, even if they had to keep their distance. It's been lovely. They have been full of joy. They're uplifting. They're just positive. They're upbeat. And we've not had any issues, and we certainly wouldn't reprimand any children regarding their masks. In all honesty, the kids are kind and polite. They remind their friends or their classmates, "Oh, your mask has fallen down." Because, some of them have little itty bitty noses where the mask doesn't want to stay on their nose, but it's just a very simple reminder from either their peer or from a teacher or from, "Hey buddy, cover your nose for me," or from me, and it works out and it's fine. It has honestly been very easy in that respect. Let me knock on wood. But it has been really, really easy regarding that. So, and they're just happy. And we hear all of those reports from parents that they are just so excited to be back in the building, that their joy has returned. And admittedly, for the adults in the building, me included, I'm the exact same way. I don't get me wrong. I think Zoom has opened up some really interesting doors for how to do things, but it's just not my preferred way to do it. So I'm tired of Zoom. I'm ready for the kids just to be back and for parents to be back in the building. And I want some level of normalcy, whatever that is nowadays. But yeah, it's been positive. It's been really good. It's been good.
Cool. Thank you very much. It's nice to hear that perspective, especially as a parent going into this, because it's worrisome. It's really difficult to navigate this, not to mention, going into kindergarten and a whole new phase of raising kids, but also on top of the pandemic and the new procedures in place. It's really difficult to navigate. So thank you guys very much.
Yeah, sure. And if you have any other questions, always feel free to reach out. We certainly don't mind. We want to make you guys feel as comfortable as possible. We take this clearly very seriously. These are, your kids are precious, and they need to make sure that they're given everything that they deserve. And safety is one of those things. So yeah, just any question you got, just let me know, let us know, and we'll get back to you. Promise.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much.
What's your child's name so I can be on the lookout if you register?
Zoe Berry.
Okay, Zoe. I'll be looking for Zoe.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Yeah. Bye. Hey, Mr. Cooper, you got any questions?
All right. You want to stop the recording too?
We're good. All right. Let me go.